Welcome to the lesson on flexible dieting. Now, if you were to go onto any fitness influencer social media account who promotes flexible dieting, you could be forgiven for thinking that flexible dieting was all about eating cake and chocolate, biscuits, donuts, all that sort of gear. They make you feel like you can eat all of that all the time and still get the results that you want. Now, unfortunately, a lot of them will do this so that you then do buy their system or their product so that you can essentially have your cake and eat it too. But we know this is not true. You cannot eat all this junk food all the time and achieve the results that you want. And there's a few major reasons for this. Number one, this sort of food is very energy dense, which means it's got a lot of calories for a very, very small amount of food. And when you eat that food, because it's so small, it's not particularly satiating. You don't feel particularly satisfied from it. And so you actually need to eat a fair amount to get any sense of fullness from it. And unfortunately, because you have to eat so much, you're getting a huge amount of energy that goes with it. And if you exceed your energy requirements, you gain weight. We know this is how you gain weight. The other issue associated with this type of food is that it is nutritionally poor. So it tends to not be particularly high in protein, and protein is the master nutrient when it comes to improving your body composition. So if you're trying to reduce your body fat and trying to build your muscle mass, you need more protein. It also tends to be very, very high in carbohydrate, but without any kind of fiber. And it tends to be very high in sugar and very high in fat. Now, our brain loves this combination, high sugar, high fat, or high carb, high fat, and it tends to make us want more. And it's very difficult to switch that off. That's a pathway in our brain called the hedonic pathway. And when you eat foods like that, it overrides our natural or our biological mechanism to regulate energy balance. So despite having met your energy requirements for the day, your brain hijacks this pathway or hijacks this response, and this pathway gets going and you overeat. So even though you are full, you continue to eat and you exceed your energy requirements. And these sorts of foods are able to do that. So foods that are high in fat, high in carbs, high energy, our brain loves them. So we need to be mindful when it comes to the inclusion of these foods in our diet. So on the website, we've got this section on flexible dieting. We have the flexible dieting guide here, which I'm about to take you through. Obviously, here is your video that you are now watching. But when it comes to flexible dieting, first and foremost, we need to remember that food manufacturers know how to hijack our brain. They have spent billions of dollars in marketing, testing, advertising. They get people to come in and test the food. They're looking at palatability. They're looking at obviously the texture and the taste. They are looking at the sweetness. There's something called the bliss point, which is just the right amount of sugar to hook you on the product and go, yeah, I want more of that. So do not be fooled for a minute in thinking that this is not geared against you. This type of food is absolutely geared against you. It is very, very difficult to not or to eat a small amount of it. We tend to easily overconsume these foods. So with all of that in mind, we then have to consider how much of it we include in our diet. Remembering that flexible foods are often not particularly satisfying, so they're not going to make us full. So we need to fill up on our nutritious food. We fill up on our protein, our veggies, fruit, whatever it is that we're having. And then we have a little bit of those flexible foods, just a small amount, so that we feel satisfied, so that we feel like we're not missing out. But obviously you need to control how much of it you eat. Another thing to consider is that flexible dieting is actually earned. This is something that we earn by A, eating well, B, going to the gym, and just doing the things that we need to have an overall healthy diet. Now, I often see that meme, you're not a dog, don't reward yourself with food. I really hate that meme for so many reasons. We can reward our hard work in any number of ways. You could buy yourself a pair of leggings, you could buy yourself some shoes, you could buy a hammer, I don't know, whatever it is that floats your boat. there's no reason why you can't also reward yourself with food. Why can't you go and have a nice night out and go out and have a nice meal? Why can't you go and have a piece of cake with a loved one, go and have a catch up for a coffee and cake? I think that's perfectly acceptable. And I actually really enjoy doing that. I also reward myself in other ways. But it is important to understand that flexible dieting has to be a part of an overall healthy diet, an overall healthy lifestyle. If all you do is eat flexible foods, that's not healthy. So we eat our healthy food, we do our exercise. If we're fasting, we include that as well. We do our, our sleep routine. We do all the things that we need to make sure that we are living a healthy lifestyle. And then we put our flexible foods in and we just enjoy them for what they are. And we certainly don't have the mindset, which is point 4, that guilt associated with, the flexible foods. I get really bothered by hearing people say, oh, I had a bad weekend. I was so naughty this weekend because I ate X, Y, Z. You're not naughty. You're not bad for eating certain foods. Food is amoral. You can't be bad for eating a certain way. Food has no morality. You are neither good nor bad for the food that you eat. And I guess this is, when you sort of go down and we look at different dietary patterns, this is, I think, part of the reason why people often object to vegans, is because there's this often a moral superiority that goes with it. Not always, but there is that tendency for vegans to have that sort of moral superiority over people about the food they're eating. And I think we really need to let that go. You are neither good nor bad for the food that you eat. And if you choose to have a piece of cake, well, then have that piece of cake and just enjoy it for what it is. And with the flexible dieting, just remember that this is part of a long-term plan. We want you to be doing today what you plan on be doing in 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. We don't want you to be doing something right now that is not sustainable or that you cannot see yourself doing in the foreseeable future. It is so important to learn how to include your alcohol, your ice cream, your cake, your pizza, your nights out, how you include that all in now, so that when we're not working together anymore, you are able to then continue on by yourself successfully. And that's what this is all about. This is all about learning and growing so that you can move on from us and you can maintain this completely by yourself. Now, alcohol seems to be, one of the topics that there's a lot of misinformation about. Can we include alcohol when we're losing weight? Absolutely. Yes, definitely. There are a number of studies which I've included here that you can have a read through that showed that when you controlled your calories, the inclusion of alcohol, a moderate amount of alcohol, there were 2 glasses in one study. I think a couple of the studies looked at 2 glasses per night. That didn't affect weight loss at all. And that makes sense. What you need to do is you need to ask yourself these questions. How does the alcohol fit in with the rest of the diet? Now, if the rest of your diet is poor and then the alcohol is adding to the poorer quality of the diet, you need to consider whether or not it should be included. Does the alcohol displace important nutrients? Are you having alcohol in lieu of eating a meal? Are you having alcohol, instead of having your veggies? Does the alcohol impact negatively upon your eating habits? So unfortunately for a lot of people, when they drink, it makes them more hungry and they tend to want to eat nutritionally poor foods. Excuse me. If that is the case, then you need to really strongly consider whether alcohol is a good inclusion for you. The other point to consider is that if you drink alcohol, say, one night, how does it impact the next day? Do you find that you eat worse the day after consuming some alcohol? And that's always going to come down to how much alcohol you're consuming, of course. And we would only ever recommend that you have the amount that is recommended by the Australian guidelines, which is for women, 1 standard drink per hour with the 2 standard drinks in a sitting. Now, the other thing to consider is it causing you to exceed your energy intake? So are you finding that alcohol is taking you over your energy threshold? And if that's the case, obviously you need to consider either eliminating the alcohol or looking at your macros and possibly reducing maybe your fats somewhere to allow for a glass of alcohol. How does the alcohol affect your sleep and your training? I find that alcohol very badly affects my sleep, and I choose pretty much to not drink anymore. I'll have something every now and then, but it's very, very rare. I'd much rather get a good night's sleep. How does it affect your training? Do you feel flat after drinking alcohol? And how does it make you feel? Do you find that it makes you anxious? Does it make you depressed? Does it make you feel sad? Do you feel good? You need to consider how the alcohol is impacting upon your moods And are you able to control the amount of alcohol you're drinking? So are you able to have just 2 drinks? Or are you the kind of person that would need to then have more? So once you've answered these questions, then you can choose whether or not you're able to include alcohol in your weekly intake. So I've just given you a few different options here. In terms of from a calories perspective, it's hard to go past a vodka soda, although surprisingly, champagne is very low calories and it's also very low carbs, so it's only 2 grams per glass. Vodka soda is 0, so 0 carbs, 0 sugar, and it is low calorie. So that is obviously a pretty good choice. But there's a few different common alcohol choices there for you to have a look at. And it's important just to note that when you start getting into the cocktails, the energy intake starts to significantly go up. Now, when you're eating out, this is obviously part of flexible dieting because you don't want to be missing out. You don't want to be saying, no, I can't go to this, I can't go to this event or this birthday party because you're trying to lose weight and you don't know how to make it work. You can put just about anything these days into MyFitnessPal and you can figure it out. So what we want you to do is we want you to just consider a few things when you know you are going to go out for a meal or going out for drinks. So before you go, one of the best things you can do is leading up to the event. Now, if it's going to be a big event and you know there's going to be a lot of eating and there's going to be, you know, a lot of drinking, it might be a wedding, what you can do is during the week is you can taper your energy requirements. So let's just say you're meant to be eating 2,000 calories. What you can do is just knock 100 off every day. So you could be eating 1,900 and then you can have those extra calories just sitting there ready for you. And then on the Saturday, let's say you're going out Saturday night, on the Saturday, you could also reduce your energy intake leading up to the event. And that way you've got a few extra 100 calories up your sleeve. But just remember, the more you drink, the more likely you are going to blow out your calories completely. You're likely to not just blow it out that day, but then the following day, you're probably not going to eat very well after that. So you do need to consider this when you are considering having a big night. The easiest way to reduce your energy intake on the day of the event is to stick with your lean sources of protein and lots of veggies. So fill up on those fibrous veg, eat that lean protein. That way you're going to feel nice and full, but you're not going to have a big energy cost associated with that. Just before you go out, have something to eat. Have something protein rich. You could have a protein shake. You could have some chicken, some salmon, whatever. Just have something just before you go. You don't want to be starving when you get to where you're going because that's when you're more likely going to make poor food choices. While you're out, think about your condiments, your dressings. They tend to be very high in energy. So you can ask for them to be on the side. And then rather than having, say, a bread roll or lots of potato or whatnot, you could have a salad instead. And again, you could save yourself some calories that way. If you're having dessert, maybe don't have an entree or have a smaller main. And if you're having drinks, I would suggest skip the dessert rather than having, you know, all of the above. If you are going to be drinking spirits, you could choose to have it on the rocks or you could have it with a low energy mixer such as soda water. Once you start getting into the soft drinks and the juices, you're going to start rapidly increasing your calories. However, you can go with things like Coke Zero and have your sugar-free drinks. If you're going to go with wine, choose the lower sugar version or the lower energy versions if you can. So as an example, champagne is a low calorie sparkling wine. And it's always wise to drink a glass of water in between every alcoholic beverage. Ideally, try and limit your drinks to 2 standard drinks in a sitting. Alrighty, and that's for women. I think it's 4 standard drinks for men. So the day after, if things went a little sideways, you don't have to stress. There are lots of things that we can do. However, if you stuck with your plan, the day after is just a normal day and off you go. But if things do go sideways, there are some things you can do. If I've had a big night of, or a big weekend, we've had a lot of food, maybe a few drinks, I usually fast on a Monday. So I'll tend to fast until lunchtime and then I will eat after that. And that easily brings down my energy intake. If you can't fast, just try and bring your energy intake down by about 200 to 500 calories. And if you're hungover, what you want to try and do is fill up on some fruits and veg. So you want to try and eat nutrient-dense food. So if you can stomach it, have some fruit, veggies, and maybe some like steak or chicken or fish. If you can't stomach that, maybe go with a smoothie and just chuck some protein powder in there. If you are able to, also try and get a weight session in or a HIIT session and try and burn off some of those additional calories. Just try and be as active as possible. Get out and get moving. And then you want to get outside and try and get some vitamin D. So vitamin D really helps with mood, particularly if you're not feeling great. So if you're feeling a bit unwell, get outside and get some sunshine. All right, now here's an example of how you can taper your eating leading up to an event. So as an example, we've got Kate here whose weight loss calories are 2,000 to 2,200. Monday to Friday, she eats 2,000, so she's eating on the lower end of her weight loss calories. Then on the day of, she eats 500 calories at breakfast and then another 500 at lunch. And then she has 300 just before she heads out. She's a protein shake. Then at dinner, she consumes 1,200 with dinner and drinks. On Sunday, not feeling particularly hungry, so she's going to naturally fast. And then she ends up going to the gym and she consumes 1,800 calories that day. Her total weekly intake is 14,300 and she has an allowance between 1,400 and 15,400. So she's still maintained her weight loss calories all week, even with having that bigger Saturday night. And it just goes to show you that if you just plan and figure it all out in advance and then have a plan for when you're out, you can actually go and enjoy yourself and have a good time and still come in within your allowance at the end of the week. All right, if you've got any questions about that, please jump in the Facebook group and have a chat. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. All right, bye everybody.